Today I'll talk about Robert Burton's The Anatomy of Melancholy, which was published in 1621 and was one of the first extensive books written on depression. Going back to the ancient world, depression was first written about in Mesopotamia and was treated as demonic possession by priests who believed it to be a spiritual illness. Similarly, in ancient Chinese, Egyptian, and Babylonian civilizations, exorcisms were used as treatments, where physicians and priests beat, starved, or restrained the afflicted. Early Greek and Roman physicians, however, believed depression was a bodily and psychological ailment and encouraged treatments such as exercise or dietary treatment. Similarly, Hippocrates believed depression was caused by a humoral imbalance, specifically by an excess of black bile. He encouraged bloodletting along with treatments of the time such as diet and exercise. In the Middle Ages and Renaissance, treatments in some places such as Persia improved, where physicians believed the brain to be the seat of mental illness. In fact, some physicians used a primitive form of behavioral therapy, where behaviors that they believed to be positive were rewarded. Unfortunately, in Europe, treatment regressed, where Europeans believed that depression was a spiritual illness brought on by witchcraft or demonic possession. They actually believed that this was contagious and were thus very afraid of the mentally ill. Treatments included exorcisms, drowning, and burning at the stake. Additionally, some individuals were quarantined. Fortunately, during this time, some doctors held on to the notion that depression was a humoral imbalance or related to poor diet. And as the Renaissance came into being, more doctors held on to this view that depression was a medical condition. Unfortunately, things such as witch hunts and executions of the mentally ill were still common. In 1621, Robert Burton published The Anatomy of Melancholy. He presented this work as a medical text, however the subject matter extended far beyond the topic of melancholy. This work was described as encyclopedia-like. What he attempted to do was use melancholy as a means to view all of human emotion, and he drew from multiple sciences of his day, including physiology, psychology, astronomy, and meteorology. In the first of four parts, Burton described the symptoms and causes, while in the second part, he described some treatments. The third part of this book elaborated on what he called melancholy of love, while the fourth part discussed what he called religious melancholy, and pointed to wisdom and meditation as a cure. After Burton, during the early Enlightenment, people believed that depression was an inherited and unchangeable weakness of temperament, and thus locking the mentally ill away in asylums became more common. As the Enlightenment moved on, however, physicians began to search for physiological and mental sources of depression. Many treatments were encouraged, such as exercise, listening to music, taking drugs, making dietary changes, water immersion, electroshock therapy, and even a peculiar treatment known as the spinning stool was used, where the afflicted were placed on a stool and spun around until dizzy, because people at the time believed that this might cause a rearranging of the brain. Unfortunately, even into the 20th century, ineffective treatments such as lobotomies were still used to treat depression. Thank you.